everybody, welcome to the #1 episode of Hobby Break. I did a sort of a prelude episode, a #0 to this, and in that I kind of discussed coming up with a name for this, and after much consternation and hemming and hawing, I came up with a really simple name of Hobby Break. So this is Hobby Break #1. If you want to know more about what's planned for the series, go ahead and watch the #0 episode. I'll talk more about that there. I'll link that here. But today we're just going to talk about like preparing miniatures. So we're going to get miniatures all the way up to the point where you're about to start putting color on them. So we're going to put some together, we're going to wash some, I'm going to use some different types, we're going to prime them and so on. The one thing I'm not going to cover today is metal miniatures. I have not yet worked with metal miniatures, but I do have some coming. I do plan to play and review Guild Ball, which if you haven't heard of that, it seems like a really cool game. It's kind of in the vein of Blood Bowl, but I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I just won't show you that because I've read up a lot. Now, one thing I will do is link to some other folks that have kicked off similar series like this. Now they're going to go into a lot more detail and step by step. So I'll put some links and I'll talk about those as I go through this. But let's just jump into this and just, talk about getting it miniatures to the point where you're ready to paint them. Okay, so jumping right in, there's a couple of different miniatures. I talked about this in episode 0. First off, the simple stuff. We have here some Reaper minis. These are nice soft plastic, no assembly required. You also have here Lando Calrissian from Imperial Assault, and no assembly required. He's also already primed, but I just wanted to use him as an example. These, all you got to do is wash them, and in the case of Reaper, you don't even have to prime them. Now, I've seen some people that say they do, and they like to do that. I've painted a few Reapers already, and haven't had any real issues with, without priming them. But the Imperial Assault ones I have primed, and I'll talk more about these in a minute. But if you're going to assemble them, the first thing you've got to do, and I've tried it without this tool before, just using some simple, regular stuff you find in a toolbox that isn't quite made specifically, little clippers, but these are definitely designed for clipping miniatures on sprues. Now Games Workshop sells these. I got this one, I believe, at Michael's or maybe Hobby Lobby. Sometimes I go in there. It's out of town, but sometimes I'll swing in there. And got that there. I think it would cost me 10 bucks. Now the cool thing about these is that it is very tiny tip, and you're going to go in here and then find, this is kind of awkward on the camera, and so you just kind of find the little joint there, you can see that, and then you're going to clip that off, and it does it so easily. This is really awkward. There we go. And so I'm going to go ahead and clip this off. I might speed up the video a little bit. So this guy came off very nice, and so I'm going to clip all these off and then put them together. Now the one thing that, let's see if this happened too much on here. Oh, you can kind of see, let's see if you can see that. You can kind of see there like a little bit of a bump, a little bit of flash there. Now there's a couple of ways to get rid of that. It's usually not the end of the world because a lot of times you're going to cover that up with primer and then with paint, and you may not even notice it unless you're getting up really close and looking at it and or entering it into a painting competition. But I've gotten in the habit of clearing these off. Now, I just use a very cheap, simple, small X-Acto knife. You have to be a little bit careful with this because you don't want to cut into the model too much. And I wouldn't get too much of a big one. I've got a larger one here with larger blades that I use for other purposes, hobbying purposes, but not for this. There are like carving tools. If you go to the Games Workshop site, they have like kits with all this stuff. They'll have like beginner paints, the clippers, and then a carving tool. And then you use that here to carve that off, and that's probably a little bit better, but this actually works fine. And I'm just going to kind of do this. So you just kind of very gently without cutting yourself, and just don't be too perfect about it, because like I said, let's see if you can see the difference. See, I got it down just a little bit. You can still kind of see a little bit of a bump there, but that's not really going to show up too much. I'm going to go ahead and carve off just a tiny bit more. And I don't feel personally like if I go in a little bit, that's not as bad. So if it's a little slight indentation, it's going to vary from like piece to piece as well. But that's not going to be as bad as something that sticks out, especially when you're trying to glue stuff together. So this sprue here is for these retributors here. And I need a couple more retributors to round out my squad. And so this comes with 2 retributors, and inside of this rule book, the nice thing about Games Workshop stuff is, especially the new stuff, is they give you all of these things. So they'll tell you, like here, #1 and #2. So the thing I cut out, was, let's see, this is number 9 here, so you can kind of see that. So it'll tell you what you need to cut out. So number 1 there, and then number 2 somewhere around here. So it'll tell you cut those 2 out first, and then you glue these together, and then you glue number 3, bam, he's on the base, and then so on. So let me go ahead and cut the rest of this out, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so I've cut apart the first one, and the next thing to talk about here is glue. And I've tried a couple of different kinds of glues over the last couple of years, and this is the ingredient you want here, this cyanoacrylate. Now this is made, or I guess branded, not made, by my local game, one of my local game stores here, Strategy Game. Very nice folks there. And this is just their glue. They sell that in the store. I think most hobby shops, I've seen other stores around here, they sell something similar. This to me is the key ingredient. This is what I've read is the key ingredient. There's a couple other glues. The other one that I've used is Loctite, and that one is pretty good as well. And sometimes you get them and there'll be like a little brush in there you can dip, and then you sort of paint the glue onto the spot where you want it to be. So I'm just gonna go ahead and kind of glue these. So now we've got here, let's say part number 1 here, and this tells me how to put in part number 2. And the nice thing about Games Workshop is they usually go together in these really cool, easy to identify and slot in places there. So we've got his kind of chest piece there. Now all of these are not going to be this easy, but you can see it kind of gives you a sort of a suggested areas, you know, where to glue it. You can see these kind of like lines and things in here. So let me do that. And we go ahead and just get the glue on these different spots here. I try not to mess up on camera here because, yeah, I already got some on his face. Kind of hard to do this in front of the camera. So we'll do that there. I'll wipe that off. And then you just kind of slot this in. And this glue is very nice because you just kind of hold it. Now this piece is almost just going to kind of fit itself. This particular little set here of Retributors, they've released a line, Game Workshop has, where they have very easy to put together stuff. So you can get one miniature or a couple of miniatures, and they even have like the rules here for the faction or the little unit there to play with. So you could even just grab 1 or 2 of these small boxes if you really wanted to try the game out and put the miniatures together, and there's only like a handful. So this is just kind of in there already. And the glue takes, depending on the kind of the joint, so you can see I might glue something here onto the arm right there. That might take a little longer than 15 seconds, but most of the time it takes like 10-15 seconds and it's in there. And then it'll keep sort of melting and hardening as it goes. So the next piece here is going to be this shoulder piece. Let me take a look at that. This one is of course very easy. You can see this shoulder piece slots in right there on that little round piece right there. And so that's going to fit very nice. So I'll add some glue here, and we're just going to try to get it right in there along the line there. And we'll slot that in there. And you just kind of push, and you don't have to like push hard, just kind of, you know, sort of firm, not too firm. Now these miniatures are usually really sturdy. You can have delicate pieces like the little hair here and stuff like that. And some other miniatures from other games will be a lot more delicate, so you don't want to push too hard. Just kind of do that there, let that sit. Now the next piece here is going to be this big hammer. And you can see there's got one hand there, and then this hand with this little wrist piece there. And these just kind of sit very nicely into these particular slots. And so I've seen in you know, other Games Workshop miniatures, then also other miniatures from other companies, trying to do this two-handed here, but doing this kind of thing where they hold something across, or there's a gun or something that's kind of out of balance, can be a little bit tricky. So this is something where you definitely will have to hold it, you know, for 30 seconds or something, just to kind of keep it, and then maybe set it off nicely off to the side. And, you know, one thing that I do is I'll try to find something. Sometimes the poses can be very crazy. Let me find him. Where is he? This sucker here. So you can look at this sort of elf dude here. You can see he's just on that rock, and that's it. So, you know, I'm supposed to glue that to the base and just let it stand up. Well, no, the model's going to carry it forward. So I actually, if I remember right, just kind of put it up so he was sort of leaning against the box to the game or something, and he just kind of sat there, and then after a while it's just there, so I can just leave it, and you know, it's stuck there forever. So you want to make use of sort of the tools around you to help balance. So let me get some glue on here. So we've got some glue now, and let's try to do this. Usually this is right in front of me, not off to the side. And so we're going to push, and we're going to hold this here for a little bit, and I'm going to use kind of the benefit of the doubt there and say, you know, I need to hold this there for 30 seconds just to kind of make sure of it. And then what I'm going to actually do is just lay this down on his back. you know, like that. See, I don't even need to hold that long because these are the easy ones. And just put that there, and then I'll start working on the other miniature while that kind of dries, and then I'll come back, do a piece on that miniature, come back to this one. Now, I did a couple of pieces on the other guy in here. This does remind me, sometimes the miniatures will not be as easy as these two fellas here. So let's take a look at this Lord Celestant on his steed here. Now, this is a very awesome miniature. Let's everybody take a look because I really like this, even just primed white. Now, this was one of the more difficult to put together good miniatures. I've had to put together some not so great miniatures in terms of their build quality. This is an excellent build quality, I think, but it was very difficult to put together. This has, I don't remember, like 30 pieces all together, and it's one, you know, one giant miniature, the guy riding on the dragon and stuff. This is this case where you want to kind of dry fit. So you kind of get all the pieces cut out, put them together as best you can, maybe glue the real simple stuff, like, you know, maybe this hammer to his hand and all that kind of good stuff earlier. And then in terms of like wrapping the armor around here and, you know, getting this guy slotted into his stirrups and all that kind of stuff, you can see it's pretty good. There's a little bit of a gap here. I could try to fill that or whatever, but I don't think it detracts too much. And like I said, you know, in the last video, I'm not trying to win any competitions. I'm just trying to make them look nice and so I can play with them. But this is a good example of a miniature that's a little bit more complex. You want to kind of dry fit stuff together before you commit to gluing them, because then if you glue it sort of wrong or sort of not lined up right, you can run into some issues here, or then you got to pull it apart. And like I said, this glue dries pretty quickly, so you might be in a bad position. And here's a good example actually of dry fitting. So you've got this large piece. It's a leg, it's an arm, it's a shoulder, it's a hammer, and it all just kind of does all of this at once. So you want to then get, of course, and kind of see where it lines up, and then go ahead and glue all the joining pieces so it's a nice even, you know, it's not like sitting off to the side or looking ugly like that. Now, in the meantime, I've completed the other fella here, and now it's time to base him. Now at this point, you have a choice, and actually you've had a couple of choices throughout this. So here we take a look at the base, and this is the, what is this, a 28 millimeter base or something they give you, and so this is where you're supposed to glue him. Now, you could do something to this base first. That's why I brought this out here, and this was this Liquitex resin sand. Now, I haven't based any of the miniatures I've painted in the last several months because I'm trying to figure out a way that I can base them kind of like all the same, but mostly because I want to use the miniature in a variety of different settings. So if I have here this wizard and I'm using him in Frostgrave, okay, I could base him with snow, great. Well, that's going to look stupid when I put him on like a blasted craterous landscape in the desert and he has snow on his base. And vice versa, if I put like, you know, rocks or something like that in there, or if he was I was using this guy in Warhammer Quest, I'm inside the Silver Tower, why would I have grass on his base, you know, for example. So I'm coming up with some different ways, and I'm kind of trying to make it a generic base. And so I've got this stuff and I got some other stuff. So I've been sort of experimenting and trying to figure out what's right for me. But a lot of folks like to do all of their bases first. You can get different basing material, you can put grass on them, etc. And then you put the miniature on after that, or after you're done painting them, actually. And sometimes you can do it afterwards. Now the nice thing about this is it's very easy to do it afterwards. So I can just base them all up and get playing with them, and if I figure out some master plan or throw it out the window, then I can do whatever I want. So I'm gonna go ahead and base them now. Now the other thing, or excuse me, glue them to the base, is this guy isn't so bad, but let's say I've glued this sort of back piece on here, but I could pop this off. And you notice I could have been painting back there. Now I have no desire to like worry about the detail that is, you know, way up in there. Some people like to do that, especially with like a shield. You'll see that a lot of times with these guys. This shield, I'm pretty sure, was just glued on here. And so people will paint the shield first and then glue it on. And so they'll paint actually each of the individual pieces of the sprues and then glue them on. But you know, for my purposes, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. I'm sure I could go find all kinds of mistakes in all the hidden nooks and crannies of this fella here. That's okay, because he's gonna be moving around on the board fighting stuff, and I don't care. The other thing that you can do is you can wash these before you actually assemble them. You know, there's no reason not to do that. Now, you definitely need to wash these in soapy water, which we'll get to in a minute, but you could actually wash all of these, prime all of these like this, and then paint them and then assemble it. You know, you could just assemble it painted. that is an option that you can do. If you really want to get into the details of the painting, you know, and spend that much time, then go for it. So I'm gonna go ahead and glue this guy on here. So we're just gonna go ahead and dab a little glue on his feet. Now, this is another spot where I like to also dry fit, just kind of see how he's gonna balance. Because sometimes, like, you know, either on like their tippy toe or whatever, and so you want to find out where the plastic's actually gonna hit the base. So I'm gonna figure that out, and then I'm gonna glue it on there. And then this is another spot again where I'll balance it against something and let it just sit there for several minutes while it gets stuck. This guy, however, balances very nice. I literally just put the glue on there. So I'm just gonna go ahead and set him up here. And see, I mean, I just dropped him on there and he's just gonna sit there and get stuck. So I'm gonna finish up the other guy, and then I'm going to cut these out. I'm not gonna bore you with that. And then we're gonna go ahead and wash these, and then we'll get into priming. A couple things occurred to me while I'm letting these dry. The first thing is, once I'm done gluing this, I'm gonna go ahead and wipe this off with a paper towel. But you wanna make sure to keep your glue head clean, or else it's a pain in the butt if you leave it for a few weeks or whatever. You gotta scrape it off and get an X-Acto knife sometimes and rip it off there. So you wanna keep that clean so you can use it next time. The other thing is, sometimes they will come in kits if you get these assembly miniatures. And this guy is from Dead Zone, and he has the same, let's see, torso and sort of legs and feet as all the other dwarves in the set, but the helmets are different, the guns are different, the other arm, the other kind of opposable arm there is different, the backpacks are different. And so what you want to do is set those aside and try to learn how you want to kit those out and what that's going to mean. That seems obvious, but I just figured I would mention that. So like this, I've got a bunch of these extra bits, guns and stuff, and different shoulder pads and things like that, that I have extra because you only have, let's see, 10 dwarves in the set, and then 10 humans and the robot dog and stuff. So you want to sort of keep in mind all that, and then that's a nice way to do some dry fitting and stuff and say, oh, okay, well, I'll put this guy with this guy, and this gun kind of fits a little bit differently than the other gun, and so on like that. And the last thing I'm gonna mention before we jump over to washing these is I'm gonna give these some time to dry. You can see I'm kind of balancing this fella here. I didn't show these two when I was assembling, but I did these two because the last two I had to assemble. So I'm gonna let him dry a little bit, kind of balanced against my little paint box. And but you want to, I think, probably give it 24 hours, because even though these are pretty much stable, unless I really forcefully like threw them or something, you know, they're good. So I think usually what I do is I assemble a whole bunch of them, leave them overnight. Next day when I get home from work or whatever, in the evening, I will go then and wash them and prime them. But through the magic of television or the internet, then we're going to wait a little bit, and then we're going to wash them right now and then prime them. Okay, so we're out here in the kitchen, and excuse the lighting and possible dog noises and all that stuff. One thing I wanted to talk about before I washed was, one thing you'll notice with some of these soft plastics, especially these Reapers, you'll see this bent spear, and you get these sort of extremities. I'm not going to do this on camera because I'll likely burn myself or one of my dogs or something. But let's pretend this was boiling water. It's not, it's just very hot soapy water. I would take and maybe hold on to this with some kind of tool or something, dip that into boiling water till it gets, you know, pretty loosey-goosey. This will get very bendy, and then you kind of get it set to where you want it to be, and then you jump very quickly over here and you have some cold water running, and then you would stick that quickly under the cold water, and then until it kind of firmed up again, and then you can fix a lot of these. A lot of the bone, you know, that have the extremities like that will have that issue. So that's something you can do. It's very easy to do, and it's super easy. I'm not really worried about my safety. Just I'm recording it, and the camera's plugged in and all that good stuff at the same time. So no thanks. So this is just some dish soap and a toothbrush, and you just kind of dip this in here. And I'm sure there's probably 1,000 ways to do this, but I just get this in here, and then we're gonna jump over here. Now, I usually don't have this in the sink, but the camera makes things awkward. So you just take this and give it a good kind of scrub. And you can see why you want those miniatures that you glued together to be pretty solid, because you wanna give this a good little scrub like this. And this is nice, warm, soapy water. And this releases some kind of bonding agent, and there's all kinds of chemistry. And I'm not Walter White, so I don't understand any of that. And then we're gonna just rinse it off here with cold water. Just get some of that soapy stuff off. And I've just got these little pieces of cardboard here, and you can just put them on a paper towel, let them dry, and then you can use paper towel later. So I'm gonna go ahead and wash the rest of these. Not super exciting. And then dry them off, let them dry off a little bit, and then we're gonna prime them. and we'll be almost done. Okay, so now we're in my garage. I apologize for the echo. Just a couple things. Now, one thing I wanted to talk about is, the storage space is a huge concern. I've got a decent sized house, and we're going to downsize though, in the next couple of years probably. And so storing all this stuff is a concern, and also like a workspace as well. Now that becomes into play when we get to talk about priming and spraying. But quick interlude and sort of preview of the next video. I've got these. These are 2 foot by 4 foot cut. I think ½ inch thick, maybe 3/8 inch, something like that. MDF boards. I got 4 of those. That's going to be part of the table episode, which is going to be posted right at the same time as this. I'll talk about that more in a minute. And then over here, I kind of created this workspace. Now, a friend of mine and I built this space, this shelf here into our garage. So this is very nice to have. It acts like a close sort of open air studio. And one thing you want to do when you talk about spraying stuff is you want to get one of these mats. I got this at I don't know, I call it the farm and feed store. There's they open and close every couple of years around here. This you want to put on. I'm going to put this on now. Oh, there we go. Now my voice is going to sound a little bit funny. Now you can do this outside as well. Now I created this space for a couple of different reasons. It's nice. You can see I have this paper over here. I put that back there just so I don't get it on the wall. The one thing that I did here is I took an old comic book box, cleared that out, and then I'm going to take it off while I talk, and then cut it out, and then I am able to spray into here. So most of it's going to get caught in there. And you can do this outside on the grass and stuff. Before I created the space, that's what I did. And then I just have several of these pieces of cardboard. You can see some of this, I actually have the miniatures on themselves. And so if I want to spray paint black, I have the black one, and then there's the white one under here somewhere. I know it's up here. And so I'm going to put these on this. Okay, so I got a little bit paranoid there about having the camera too close. So what I basically did here, I've got this here in front of that, and so this comic book box here is going to catch most of that off spray. Some of the other stuff will get back into the piece of paper there. You've got your different primers. Here's the white one. What you're looking for is white flat, or sometimes a black flat or gray flat. You can get paint on as well. These are where you actually paint the primer on. I don't know why you would do that, because this covers it very nice. So you just kind of get this back here, maybe 6-8 inches, and just kind of spray it, cover it, turn it around. Sometimes you can put it, or just turn the cardboard itself. You don't put a whole bunch of them out there. So I'm going to go ahead and spray these last 2. We'll give you kind of a close-up of that. You can see that's the little Skaven fella. And then this is the Orc Shaman. There. And then after we put the primer on, you're going to see all the detail kind of come through. You can see these are kind of dry a little bit now. But you can see the details really starting to pop already. Part of that is because these are Games Workshop miniatures, and part of it's because we got primer on and we're showing the details. So we're going to go ahead and spray these other ones. One thing you want to do is you want to shake this up. I should have mentioned that earlier. You hear that ball bouncing around? You can feel if there's any kind of clumps in there a little bit. So you just want to give it a good shake, especially if it's been sitting out for a while. But make sure you do that before you shoot the primer. And just kind of don't hold it down where you're you don't do that much. Just kind of, like this, kind of shot in the air there. But just nice dusting, a nice, just a thin layer of primer just to accept the paint later on here. And so let's just take a look here. See if I can get that a little bit closer. He's still a little bit wet. Try not to, there we go. But you can really see lots of the details start to form and start to come in just with a coat of thin primer. Okay, I took the mask off. So this video is about to end. I will put some links to a couple of other folks that have started similar series to this, mostly just focused on painting. You'll see in the next video, I'm not just focused on only painting, but getting the table ready, and that's what the table's gonna be more showcased next time. So they're really going to get into a lot of detail. So hopefully this series is kind of a jumping off point. Okay, I'm at this point. Okay, I'm going to look at this. This is kind of what I need. And then, you can look in more detail and look at all the stuff. Now, the one thing I didn't mention was the metal miniatures, and it's pretty much the same idea. You're going to have to wash them. You're going to have to prime them. You're going to have to assemble them. Now, the only real trick is with the assembly and that is going to require you to actually like kind of score possibly the joint. So like where I put the shoulder pad on here, I might score it a little bit with an X-Acto knife and then put a little bit of milli put or like green putty right there, connect them, and then glue them from there. The other thing that is different is I haven't worked with any resin yet, and resin, I think you want a different kind of primer. Other than that, I think we can use the same glue, the same process of, you know, cutting them out and putting them together, but maybe somebody will post in the comments like a good primer for resin. Okay, so that's this video. Definitely check the links in the description, and then look at the next video where we're talking about preparing the table.